This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on the show. Going to get on. Welcome to the best 15 minutes or so in the universe. It's Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. That's Mark Garrigus over there in New York City. What's going on, Mark?
Well, there's quite a bit today, wouldn't you say? I mean, I think the Twitter is ablaze with reports out of the Rittenhouse case. They've put witnesses on today, including an FBI agent who apparently had footage from a surveillance plane, and it sure sounds like maybe that footage, all of the footage, did not get turned over. And there was some fireworks in the courtroom today regarding that, which, you would think the prosecutor, that local state prosecutor, told the judge, I don't have control over the feds, which I find kind of humorous because he's got a Fed on the stand testifying. And the only way the FBI would allow that is if they granted permission for him to do it and allowed him to testify there, or they were working in cooperation with the feds. So it's somewhat of an inauspicious start to the proceedings.
Well, just to set the table, young man goes into Wisconsin. He's got a gun. He has his medical kit. He's there to protect a business, maybe of a friend of his, or maybe someone has asked him to do it. He's also going to offer some medical assistance. But I believe he does offer some medical assistance at some point. And then at some point he gets chased and runs into a parking lot and shoots somebody. And then at another point, he tries to sort of run for his life to get behind the police barrier, for lack of a better term, and is tackled in the middle of the street, and I think hit with a skateboard, or at least threatened with a skateboard, and then he shoots that guy. Then another guy pulls a gun. That guy gets shot in the upper arm. And then, of course, the media goes nuts because he's a white supremacist and he needs to spend the rest of his life in a cell with no windows in it. But the footage everyone has seen looks like a pretty good defense, but I don't know what the footage was, this new footage. I don't know what this revealed. Do you? Yeah,
this is so far has been apparently not disclosed or shown so far. We'll see, I think, when they've entered into an exhibit, you'll be able to see it. Then in addition to that, we talked about on the previous show the fact the judge ruled that the prosecution couldn't call the deceased victim, and apparently the defense lawyer in the opening statement twice referred to them as victims, then caught himself and said complaining witness. It's become so de rigueur that it's very difficult to catch yourself in those things.
How much are you allowed, speaking of victims, you're not allowed to say this woman who was raped had quite a past with the fellas, like that we're not allowed to bring up. But evidently, some of the guys that were victims had quite a past in terms of some of these riots and being involved with some violence and some things that feel germane to me. But in a way, it is sort of bring up famously the O.J. Simpson thing. They were not allowed to bring in the court the fact that his ex-wife had called 911, said he's going to kill me, I think, earlier, which again feels like evidence to me, or it feels like it helps paint a picture, but not admissible. Some of these characters that he shot seem to have some dodgy past. I don't know if that's admissible. Do you know anything about that?
One of the things they did show, and so obviously they had previewed it with the judge because otherwise the prosecution would have had an aneurysm, was they showed some tapes of the guy who got shot, who was mouthing off, if you will, prior to his getting shot. So that came in because I assume it was close in time and relevant to the confrontation. And that was repeated not once, but twice in the opening statements. Interesting you brought up OJ, because this particular judge also in another case allowed in a piece of evidence that was a letter that basically said the same thing in that case, or roughly like, if I die, it's going to be him. That case was later reversed for him letting in that. And I thought that's a pretty good example you're giving of the kinds of evidentiary rulings that judges have to make. In that case, that forfeiture by abstention, some courts have ruled that if you're the one who caused the person to not be there, that evidence should come in without cross-examination or the ability to cross-examine. Others have said, well, wait a second, that assumes that you did it. And if you're presumed innocent, how could that be?
Gary, what'd you have on that?
Well, they
footage?
showed. I think I can inform you a little more. And you were asking about that other video. I don't believe they've shown any of it yet. However, in opening statements, there was a still frame of it that they had a picture printed out. And the thing that's unique about this footage is that it's infrared footage. So they got a hold of something that can presumably see the heat signatures, even in portions of the video that were obscured before. So that's what's going to be very interesting, is to see what kind of movements were happening that we couldn't see in just the traditional video.
Whose side is this going to help?
It's unclear. I believe the prosecutor was speaking when I saw the still, but let me go check that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Mark,
I think the defense was characterizing it as to what he was saying as well. And apparently repeating the N-word in the courtroom, and that caused a great consternation. But if it's a piece of evidence, I don't know what they expect the defense lawyer to do. He's dealing with the evidence, and that's what he has to do.
wait, who was saying the N-word in the courtroom?
The defense lawyer apparently was characterizing what the complaining witness, or now decedent, had said on the tape.
Oh, I see. Oh boy. Now this is tough, because we don't like the guy who had the gun, but now if the other guy's going to drop N-bombs, CNN's going to be in a little bit of a quandary here as to what side they need to put their sizable support on. So what's your, and by the way, boy, I got to tell you, in the last 10 minutes, FBI guys or CIA guys or even Capitol Hill police, giving their testimony on things, it used to carry a lot of weight for me. Now it's like, the former head of the FBI says what?
Allow me to correct myself. It was the defense attorney who was speaking when that image was displayed. So presumably they are going to say that you can see some of the actions that were coming at Kyle that you could not have seen in the original video. You can see some of the movements possibly that were obscured.
Well, he was being chased, right? I don't know why they chased the guy with a gun, but it seemed like he was chased into a parking lot and sort of cornered behind a car or something, if memory serves.
Well, I think I'm assuming that the footage as it's described that was turned over is now if a drone or surveillance plane or whatever it was, it's kind of a top-down view. You're going to be able to get another vision of what actually transpired here, which is a real-time video of it, unless as the defense says, or they've characterized today, that they've lost it or they don't have it.
Right. So now we have to do that thing where the media is going to go all in against Kyle Rittenhouse, who's being chased by a guy with a skateboard down the street who shot him, but they have zero thoughts about the Capitol police officer who shot the chick in the neck from point blank. So that's my whole thing. This is the problem with the news. It's got to be kind of one or the other. You got to be consistent. If you don't like people shooting people, fine, but you also have to then be upset over the Capitol police officer who shot Ashley Babbitt, but they don't have any problem with that guy, but they got a big problem with this guy. Yes, Gary.
I also thought it was very interesting how quickly they selected a jury. They seated 20 people in one day. Granted, it was a long day. It went past dark, and I also found the makeup somewhat interesting. It was 19 white, 1 Latina or Latino, I don't know the gender, and then the breakdown along gender lines was 11 women and 9 men.
What do you think, Mark?
Seems to me that the defense already understands which buttons they have to press, and they're already pressing them in the opening. With that kind of a breakdown, Gary and I'll figure out what the ages are, but that would seem to augur well for the defense, especially if you've now got a situation already on day 1 or 2 of the testimony of somebody saying they had other footage, or they were filming at the time, and somehow miraculously this footage isn't around. That's, that jurors don't like things like that. Most humans don't.
What are they going for? What's the prosecution going for?
They're looking for a murder, and they've got a variety of counts, but he's facing, for all practical purposes, the rest of his natural life in prison if he gets convicted.
So they're going after murder 1. They're not.
In Wisconsin, they have a, I forget the name of it, but it is the most serious murder charge.
Strategically, we've talked about this in the past, sometimes prosecutors getting over their skis in terms of the charges. Do you feel like this is an overreach? Do you feel like they would have a better chance of bringing in a conviction for a lesser charge of some version of manslaughter or murder 3 or what? There's a lot of nuances, as we've learned from the Derek Chauvin trial, and it's from jurisdiction to jurisdiction sometimes, but do you feel like they're in danger of getting over their skis and going for what doesn't seem like a murder 1 case?
Well, sometimes what they do, I've always felt this way. Some prosecutors, once they leave the office, will admit it. They overcharge a case with the hopes that the jury, especially if there's problems in proof, they hope the jury will compromise and not go acquittal across the board. But as you said, they find what's called a lesser included or a lesser offense. And that, in this case, that would be manslaughter. I think, based on the jury selection and the way it's rolling out, we'll see. But it seems like the defense has got a leg up here.
Do you have? I have his charges here. If you'd like me to read them off. All right. So, 1st-degree reckless homicide, use of a dangerous weapon. Then also 1st-degree recklessly endangering safety, use of a dangerous weapon. 1st-degree intentional homicide, use of a dangerous weapon. I believe that's the one Mark was referring to. Attempted 1st-degree intentional homicide, use of a dangerous weapon. 1st-degree recklessly endangering safety, use of a dangerous weapon. Possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18. And finally, failure to comply with an emergency order from a state or local government.
Well, it feels like most of their case has to be about him bringing the weapon into that environment, maybe even more than using the weapon. And I mean, maybe it's a weird way to parse it out, but what I'm saying is once you're being chased down the street and you trip and you fall and there's a guy swinging a skateboard at you, at that point you do use your weapon. I don't know how they charge that, but
right,
that's the big one, actually, which is interesting. Right. That's the one where they charged him with 1st-degree intentional homicide and use of a weapon.
Well, was the other guy swinging a skateboard at him or something?
The report is that in that instance, a skateboard was swung at his head or neck area, and that the gentleman with the skateboard was attempting to gather the weapon.
I would put together a montage, by the way, if I were defending Kyle Rittenhouse, of footage from CNN over the last year and a half where skateboards were used to bash in cop car windows, bonk people over the head. I mean, when I was a kid, a skateboard was just a skateboard. I didn't know it was going to turn into a weapon. I mean, it's literally, I've seen more weaponized skateboards over the last 18 months than the prior 50 years combined. But it turns out they're smashing storefront windows. They're clobbering people over the head with it. They're bashing out windshields of cruisers. You can make a pretty good. A skateboard's not just the skateboard anymore. It's definitely been weaponized.
Well, the law has pretty much always been that anything that you can use to cause an assault or a battery can be a deadly weapon. And so, you see it with baseball bats, you see it with hammers, you see it with screwdrivers. So skateboard is certainly something that can be used as a deadly weapon. And the prosecution argument is, Well, they know that you can't elevate your response to a gun just because you're getting beaten. That's going to be their argument, and that's what they're going to try to get the judge to charge the jury with.
But I think the defense, and it'll probably be pretty accessible from the video, they're going to make that argument that cops make all the time, which was, you were wrestling, the guy was unarmed, why'd you have to shoot him? And they go, he was trying to get my gun. So in which case...
You're exactly right. That's already what they said. They said that the defense has characterized it as what they were not only just beating him, but they were reaching for his gun as well. That's exactly right. It's a page right out of what the cops always say.
Yeah, and then in which case, you using a gun is an overreach. If in 2 seconds your gun may be their gun, then you get to use your gun, or at least justify it as using your gun.
Well, the other interesting thing is that they indicated, and I'm sure they're going to do it, that he would take the stand. So we will see what he testifies to when he gets on the stand. I know he was out on bond or bail or something, right? Correct. He was in custody for a while, and then he's been out.
Is he just coming in every day to court like it was any misdemeanor situation?
No, I'm sure that they've got a way to get him securely in and out.
But he's in and out. He's sleeping in his own bed at night.
Last I heard, I know they went for a bail revocation, but I don't think they revoked his bail.
Wow. Well, we'll keep you. Hey, Gary, can you find that footage? Is there any kind of montage of that online? I just feel like I need a quick refresher. I know I've seen it.
All right. Well, then why don't you guys talk about the case out of Las Vegas this morning while I get that going for you.
Oh, yeah. The Raiders DB, I think it was.
Correct.
Yeah, they've already indicated DUI causing death, which I see these all the time get charged as murder also. So it's interesting to see what the prosecutor's going to do in this case.
25 years ago, if you did that in Vegas, you're probably not seeing the inside of a jail cell or not any significant time, right? But that was then.
30 years ago, I'd say maybe even longer, 35 years ago. Generally, it was a 1 year with probation, something like that. It's evolved. The doctrine that's kind of evolved through the efforts of a lot of the lobbying groups to make these things more mandatory and to bring there's the Watson admonition, which is the name of a case, but if somebody's got priors for anything alcohol related, that tends to enhance it or give the prosecution their predicate to charge it as a murder.
Yeah, and so they don't go after vehicular manslaughter anymore. They're going after murder.
Well, they still will charge vehicular manslaughter if the case has some problems with it, so to speak, from a prosecutorial standpoint, for the same theory that you mentioned before, that a jury may acquit on the murder because they think that's a bridge too far, but will convict on the vehicular manslaughter. And a couple of years ago, I had one of those cases that we talked about, and that was exactly what the jury did. They 9-3 for not guilty on the murder, which was dismissed, and then they convicted on the vehicular manslaughter.
Yeah, but I was thinking about that case, and I believe in that case there was a story of an officer who gave him a ticket for speeding earlier.
Correct, like 4 or 5 months before when he was a juvenile.
And told him to slow it down. And that's admissible. And I was thinking about that specific case as we were talking about the letter from the deceased that the judge got, or the OJ situation where she called 911 and says, "He's not going to kill me." I know getting an actual traffic infraction is on paper and is in the, entered into the, the official registry, so to speak. But in a way, it's kind of the same argument, right? Well, just because I was speeding 4 months ago, what's that have to do with the nuts and bolts of this case? And then they go, well, it shows a history. But I would also argue that calling 911 and saying he's going to kill me is kind of showing a history as well, but that's not admissible.
Correct. And there's the the prosecution will generally frame that as that's somebody who had a warning, so they should have known better. And in the case with the either a 911 tape or something else, they're going to say, no, that shouldn't be admissible because you're not able to cross-examine the person.
All right. Do you have any of that footage?
I don't have a montage per se, but I do have a specific video here that will just, whet your appetite.
All right. So there's a guy swinging a skateboard around, multiple guys swinging, lots of guys swinging on him. Is he the subject of that beating, or are they beating somebody else?
I believe they're beating that gentleman right there in the black shirt. But this is just a bad story out of Orlando. I was just trying to give you an example to.
That's not the Rittenhouse.
No. Sorry.
This
didn't
is
have the time. I was just trying to
get it. This is skateboard violence.
Correct.
Yeah,
trying to show you a skateboard as a weapon.
Pat Benatar said many years ago to stop using sex as a weapon. And I would suggest that young people need to stop using skateboards as a weapon. All right.
I'm getting kicked out of here,
Mark's
so
getting
thank you guys.
Kicked out of the kids' room. I got to go take care of business myself. Good to see you, my brother. You guys can go to adamcarolla.com for all the live shows, and you can check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt podcasts. And until next time, it's Adam Carolla for Mark Garriga saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.